Hello Class 7e. My name is Christina Heile. I am a Referendarin at the Gymnasium of Balingen. Maybe you remember me. I was sitting in the back of your class a few times before the corona pandemic. But since then, a lot has changed. We cannot meet in our school anymore. We cannot meet in our classroom right now. So I thought maybe today I'm going to give you a little bit of that classroom experience back through this video. So today I'm going to tell you about a grammar phenomena which is called indirect speech. So the question is, what is indirect speech and what is important when we use it? You use indirect speech when you report what someone is saying or what someone has said. This is why it's also called reported speech. To introduce what someone says or has said, you usually start like this. Person X plus a verb like say or tell and that. I'm gonna give you an example. Imagine a phone call between John and Sarah. And right beside Sarah, there's Ben, and she's reporting to him what John is saying. So John says, "Sorry, I can't come to the party tonight. I've broken my leg." And Sarah reports to Ben, "It's John. He says that he can't come to the party tonight. He says he's broken his leg." Note, there is no comma before that. That is a difference to German. Also, often the that is left out, like in the second sentence. He said he's broken his leg. Also, pronouns are changed according to who is talking. So Sarah changes the I to he and the my to his, and so on. Furthermore, if you report speech directly, so for example, if you're still on the phone with someone, like Sarah and John, you introduce indirect speech in present tense, like we did so far. However, if you report speech later, so for example, if Sarah later tonight at the party tells their friends about John who's broken his leg, she would introduce her indirect speech in past tense. So he said, and so on. But if she uses the introduction in past tense, a few things change about what she's reporting then. And this is what we're going to look at next. So that leads us to the second question. How do tenses in reported speech change when you introduce them in past tense? So before we had the example of Sarah and John who were on the phone, and Sarah was reporting to Ben right away what happened to John. However, most of the time when we report what someone has said, it is something that happened in the past, and so we have to change our tenses according to that. And this is called the backshift of tenses. There are a few rules to keep in mind. If you have present tense in the direct speech, it changes to past tense in indirect speech. So this first example is not very realistic, but for the sake of the examples to all be the same, I'm going to still use it. So imagine John says, "I'm breaking my leg." I'm not sure if you would ever say that, but if Sarah would report that later on, she would say, "John said he was breaking his leg." So here the present tense changed to past tense. Next, present perfect changes to past perfect. If John says, "I've broken my leg," Sarah would later report, "John said he had broken his leg." Next, past tense changes to past perfect. So if John says, "I broke my leg," Sarah would later report, "John said he had broken his leg." So again, past perfect. Will future changes to the conditional. So if John says, "I'll break my leg," Also, I'm not sure if that's a realistic example, but if he would say, I'll break my leg if I do that, for example, Sarah would report in the conditional, John said he would break his leg. And lastly, can or may change to could or might. So if John says, I can or I may break my leg, Sarah would report, John said he could or he might break his leg. So keep these rules in mind whenever you use indirect speech and you introduce it in the past. So as we learned so far, in indirect speech, pronouns and tenses often change. But not just these, also adverbs of time and place change when we use indirect speech. Often when we talk, we use adverbs of time like today, yesterday, tomorrow, or adverbs of place like here, there, in this country, and so on. But obviously, these adverbs always refer to the person who is speaking. So, in indirect speech, we have to change these adverbs according to the person who is reporting. I'm going to give you an example. John says, I've broken my leg today. If Sarah reports what John says on the same day, for example on the phone, like in the first example, she's going to say, John says he broke his leg today. And even if she reports what John said the same day but later that evening, she would say, John said he had broken his leg today. So if it's still on the same day, she would use the same adverb. But obviously, on the next day, Sarah would say, John said he had broken his leg yesterday. So the adverb of time here changes according to who is speaking. So note here that if you are reporting what someone has said on the same day, or in the same month, or in the same year, you keep adverbs like yesterday, today, this month, next year. However, if a certain time span is already over, you shift the time. Here are a few more examples of those time shifts or place shifts. Please copy everything that we talked about so far in the grammar part of your folder. The next question is, how do you report questions in indirect speech? The most important distinction to answer this question is between yes-no questions and questions with question words, like where, when, what, and so on. First of all, let's look at yes-no questions. I'm gonna give you another example. Sarah asked John, did you break your leg? And John later reports, Sarah asked me if I had broken my leg. Note here that the rules for tense backshift still apply. Or another example. Sarah asks John, will you break your leg? And John later reports, Sarah asked me whether I would break my leg. So we can conclude here, and the rule here is that for yes-no questions, we always need if or whether after the introducing sentence, and also the tense backshift always applies. Let's take a look at question word questions. Again, another example. Sarah asked John, when did you break your leg? And John later reports, Sarah asked me when I had broken my leg. Note again that also for question word questions, the tense backshift rules apply. Or another example. Where have you broken your leg? Sarah asked me where I had broken my leg. So the rule for question word questions, which we also call interrogative pronoun questions, they always keep the question word in indirect speech. So we always take the what or the when or the where, and we also use it for the indirect speech. And the last question for this video is, how do you report commands in indirect speech? Again, I'm going to give you an example. So we're still with the broken leg example, and maybe a little bit before this situation, before John broke his leg, Sarah told him, "Look out for the stairs." So this is a command, and let's imagine later on somebody reports that Sarah told John to look out for the stairs. Or maybe a negative example, if Sarah says to John, "Don't break your leg," then somebody would later report, Sarah told John not to break his leg. So we keep in mind the rule that commands in indirect speech are reported with an infinitive, like to look out. In a negative command, you just add a not before the infinitive, so for example, not to break. Sometimes indirect commands are reported with that and should. So here's another example for how to report indirect commands. Sarah said that I should not break my leg. In general, keep in mind that for indirect commands, this is the only case where a tense backshift does not apply. Again, please copy everything that we talked about until now from everything I have written down here.